Welcome to Understanding the Girl Behind the Door series, a painting collection review from Jennifer Ann Mudashan. The means of repeating something often is because there is some significance and some reason to call such attention to the thing in question, normally being to communicate the importance of the item of repetition. So, what should it mean if an artist does the same thing in regard to his paintings? And how could a conclusion about their meanings be found if there is no information and documents from the artist at all to describe his thoughts behind the piece? These are the questions that I have wondered and will be figuring out the answers to in this review of an untitled series that I call the Girl Behind the Door series. Allow me to introduce Mr. Hans Zotzke, born in 1859, who was an Austrian academic painter that studied at the Academy der Beaux-Arts in Vienna, Austria. He found his niche for illustrating dreamlike and whimsical settings out of the imagination in the academicism approach, including various religious, allegorical, and oriental subjects too, almost if not all being of women. He became known later in life for the establishment of his paintings into collectible postcards and for becoming the popular choice of decor around 20th century European homes and museums. It would be fair now to wonder the question, what is academic art? It is known also as academicism, an approach to painting and art influenced from the teachings of European academies of art that could sometimes be considered the meeting point of art from the Neoclassicism and Romanticism periods. It follows all of the rules in regards to illustrating true-to-life lights and shadows, color hues, proportions, etc., and fulfills the ideals of classical art. But this, in fact, is one of the reasons that there is such a controversial and critical view of this approach to painting. Because it is academic and taught in schools, a lot of artists consider it to be little in originality and imagination. From the source titled Academicism and the National Academy of Design from the Art World Academic Journal, the rules of academies in regards to how a painting should be are said to be in, quote, faultless composition and according to traditional standards, end quote, including drawing of the natural human figure from anatomical knowledge and true-to-life proportions, with color hues, lightings, and shadings illustrated in formal and thoughtful fulfillment that communicates sound artfulness to not be too far in moderation. The journal continues on to read that an academic picture is, quote, thoroughly and intelligently composed, accurately drawn, pleasingly and appropriately colored, correct in perspective and anatomy, and soundly painted. Why then this horror of the academic, and how can a picture be too academic? End quote. The issue here that the author is communicating is that European academies have long established this idea that an academic painting must compromise the imagination and original ideas of an artist for being composed in such a sound regard, and that it must either be one or the other, but that it cannot be both. But that is totally far from the truth, because an artful genius can sustain a well-painted illustration from the imagination that establishes an emotional response from the viewer and communicates an original message to them from its refashioning of, quote, pleasing and appropriate color into passionate or glorious color, end quote, and making light and shadows become poetic in nature. To further understand what academicism became throughout time, we should review the original purpose behind it. From the Romanian Journal of Artistic Creativity, titled Academic Art, the Balance of Objective Beauty in the Modern Mirror, the author shares her own ideas on the issue, communicating more insight on the nature of academicism. In regard to what the reason of academic art is, she writes, quote, it is therefore canonical, as its main purpose is to capture beauty in as accurate a manner as possible, end quote, and continues to detail how in classical paintings, the idea of beauty being in the eye of the beholder is disregarded for a factual and impersonal understanding instead. In other words, a lot of classical art does not understand that what it means to be beautiful could be different from each person, and that is in turn what causes it to be so beautiful. The point of the visual loveliness of something is to be adored and viewed for one's delight, and that is something that has been disregarded in past European art academies. Instead, the academies held much more detailed definitions of the beautiful in art, being paintings of, quote, calculated proportions of the idealized human figure, end quote, and a truthful illustration of real life, which are some of the ideals that will be seen in the paintings of Hans Zotzke. Because we now have a true understanding of what academicism in art entails, we will now take the Girl Behind the Door series into consideration of the foundation we have laid. The series has no formal title and was not grouped in a sort of series format, so I established a little collection to review. Something to note is that I found no dates for these paintings, although we know that it was from around 1880 to 1945. From all the paintings I found that I think are from this informal series, I have chosen to focus on 4 of them because some of them did not have a title, and I thought it would be easier to look at a couple of them in detail for a true and thorough review. The first painting is called The Amorous Visitor. The light and saturated hues, soft lighting, and overall whimsical mood will be continued in each painting, a signature of Hans Zotzke's other paintings too. The image includes a woman in her room holding the door closed while a man tries to open it and look inside while she is getting dressed. It sounds like a little bit of a messed up situation, but the facial cues of the woman do not communicate that she feels unsafe or scared, but rather cheerful instead, which is what interested me so much about this series. It would make much more sense if she was worried and upset, but her light-hearted emotion made me curious about what the thoughts behind the series are. The second painting, titled The Forbidden Entrance, has all the same attributes as the first one, but is placed in a little different setting with a couple of changes to the items pictured and such, but not to the other details of the illustration. It is also seen that all of these images will include all of the academic characteristics that we talked about earlier, so we will focus more on understanding the actual meaning behind the series instead. We should consider a little background information about what Vienna, Austria would have been like around the 1900s. I would assume that the woman is an aristocrat for a number of reasons featured in each painting. The garments that she is wearing are of quite soft and lush fabrics and decorated with ribbons and lace trimmings. The room includes a Rococo decorated theme to it, full of ornate and fanciful features, along with the multitude of things all around the mess of the room. For someone to have so much stuff of such decorated means, I think it indicates that there is enough money for them to purchase these unneeded things, therefore being an aristocrat. To paint a little picture of an idea of the life of the woman pictured, the Viennese aristocrats had tasteful lives in the heart of the capital of fine bakeries and pastries. It was also common to see coachmen driving carriages with fashionable horses around the town, where it was popular to see their renowned orchestras and operas. So we could imagine that the woman was of an artfully cultured and sophisticated nature. To further figure out the situation at hand, the study of the fashion included should be done because fashion is an incredible source of historical and social information. From the book Fashions of the Habsburg Era, Austria, Hungary, authors Stella Bloom and others detail all of the little garments and such that were fashionable throughout the various centuries in Austrian culture. The authors describe how the view of women as fragile and defenseless that became so popular in the 19th century continued into the Austro-Hungarian Empire. The women would dress in the latest Parisian fashions, which were already so feminine and girly in their demeanor, but communicated a mood of ladylike daintiness from the choice of wardrobes that were in light, soft fabrics and colors, with lots of additional trimmings of lace, ruffles, and ribbons. This established such a delicate appearance to the woman, being the social ideal at the time. This fashion is seen word for word in each of the paintings, which now allows us to understand that the woman is someone regarded as fragile and delicate in nature, adding another piece of the puzzle that is the big picture behind the series. If the woman is said to be timid in her demeanor, it is reasonable to assume that the men were considered to be for the protection and care of their women. And because it was in the earlier 20th century, I would guess that there were social reproaches about intimate relationships outside of marriage. So now I have a couple of theories in mind. But before going through our theories on the reasons behind these paintings, we should learn about how to do so from a scholar point of view. From the journal article titled Form and Mental State, an Interpersonal Approach to Painting from Advances in Psychiatric Treatment, there is a lot of knowledgeable insight on how to understand the mind of a painter and therefore know more about the paintings in question. It is only right to start at the beginning, when the artist first finds their impulse to create a piece. The idea, called le petit sensation, is that there is some imagined idea or emotion that comes about and becomes the initial cause for an artist to feel the need to begin on a work. Furthermore, the choices of colors, lines, shapes, and other attributes of art communicate more insight on the internal state of the artist and their own personal condition. From there, the artist begins to put more and more time into looking at the painting while it is being painted, where there is this idea of the painting speaking, which in turn also reveals something to the artist about themselves. This is a point in which the painting is also said to name itself. All of these together cause the painter to form a relationship with the painting in regard to learning more about themselves and their innermost parts, most being about feelings of individualism that will almost be a mirror to both the one painting it and the one viewing it. This journal goes on to talk about how to read the painting, which is done from going backwards from how it was made. This includes the consideration of the title, once the painting names itself, as I said earlier, into the meaning of the painting. The title is often the sole source of insight from the artist himself about his painting that the viewer is able to have if there is no formal written caption about the piece. With all this in mind, an actual discussion of some of my own ideas that I have thought of could be now taken into consideration. One of the potential situations at hand could be that of an affair situation, where the woman has a husband but is having an affair with another man, that being the one behind the door. The other idea is that she is not in a relationship at all and the man is in pursuit of her, whether that be an admirer or a suitor that I think she would have a little crush on from her facial cues, and perhaps she doesn't want to cause rumors if she allows him to come into the room. The situation that I find would be the most true is that the man is in a relationship with her and she is changing her clothes because at the time it was custom to change for each part of the day, including to eat breakfast in the morning, for lunch and daytime errands, and dinnertime outings. I think that she is getting ready to go see him, but out of his impatience and passion for her, he wants to come inside while she's in the middle of putting herself together. And from the titles, the amorous visitor, amorous meaning to be in love, and the expected visitor, meaning she knows that he is coming, I find that there is no animosity in their interaction. Further, the other titles, The Forbidden Entrance and After the Ball, lead me to think that she does not want him to see her in such an undone state, which is a totally reasonable want that most people could agree on. From all of the time and research placed into understanding the message behind an otherwise curious painting illustration, I have now come to a conclusion that I would not have made without finding out so much about how to read a painting, what life was like at the time, and how the kind of academic painting is regarded. I will continue to wonder about how Hans Zatzke did not want to put them all in a formal series and include his own thoughts about them, but perhaps that is all part of his artful genius after all. I mean, isn't the purpose of art to figure out what it means to each person individually, and therefore show one something about themselves that was otherwise hidden? I wanted to tell you thank you for taking the time out of your day to listen to my review and establish an understanding regarding the Girl Behind the Door collection. It is my genuine longing that you now understand not only this collection much more in detail, but also have learned how to read and review a painting from a scholar approach too. Thank you all so much once again, and have an absolutely wonderful day.